And welcome back. You guys. Thanks for being here. We were just talking about what to look at for the few minutes we've got with Dr. Cousens today. And he's got some insights into what's happening in the world situation now and how it can be resolved. So let's go to Dr. Cousens and see what's going on. Welcome. Gabriel,
Okay, thank you, Richard. And greetings and love to everyone. The world is a little messy today. You may have noticed it. Now, what is today? It's near the end of February. I think February, it's actually March 3rd. Trump had just had this interview with Zelensky. So that's our context. Zelensky from the Ukraine. So we're going to take a look at how do we get the best outcome from a very, very messy situation around the world. We have over 115 wars going on at this point. And the big ones, of course, are Ukraine and Russia, but also Israel and Gaza and, potentially Egypt into that and Iran. So it's a complex situation, but it needs a simple solution. And that's what I think is going on. And I think that's where Trump is really counting on making a difference in the world. So that's kind of our topic. And we're going to start by dancing, because dancing opens the heart, balances the system. It's really, really good for people with Parkinson's disease and other neurological troubles. It's good for depression. It's good for anxiety. There's over 41 studies that show that dancing helps treat dancing and depression. The brain changes shape in a good way. It oxygenates the brain. So there's a lot of good things. It improves cognition, clarity, attention, body balance. It's good to dance. And it brings a lot of joy. So that's where we're going to start. And it gets you in a mood to kind of deal with these more difficult questions. And just sit for a moment, kind of centering yourself, merging the heart and the mind. Okay. Again, I welcome you all with love. And we're discussing, I think, issues that a lot of people are thinking about. A lot of people saw at least part of the Trump, J.D. Vance, and Zelensky kind of Oval Office interview. And it's like, what is going on here? And I think it got out of hand. From my point of view, Zelensky couldn't seem to show any respect or even stop him interrupting Trump. It's very uncool. And he didn't seem to be interested in peace. So I'm going to go off that because I think that's where a lot of the difficulty is the way Trump put it, when you're interested in peace, come back and we'll talk. Okay, and I think that's kind of the message. Peace is complicated. The levels of peace. I've written a book called The Sevenfold Peace, peace with the body and peace with the mind, and peace with the family and peace with the community and peace with the environment and peace with all cultures and peace with God. Lots of levels of peace. We're talking something way more basic, which is how do we stop fighting to catch our breath so we can quiet that turmoil down. It's really almost hard to talk about peace. We can say cessation of fighting and cessation of hostilities. At least you're not acting them out. That's a good first step. So truly, talking about peace isn't where the world is at. And we can look at Gaza. If you look at the grandmothers and mothers in Gaza, and what's been said since 1920s is we want to destroy all the Jews. And this is before the state Israel even existed. That doesn't bring you to peace. Okay? Now we can say, hey, look, the Jews are responding, they're bombing and doing it. Okay, there's a war going on. Okay? But October 7th didn't exactly, it came in almost what I would call demonic attack on people, burning babies, beheading people. It's like, what world? What civilization are we looking at? So, and really, there's probably over 110 wars going on around the world right now. So it isn't just Gaza or Russian Ukraine. It's really the mental frequency of the world. And we have a peace meditation, which we do every week, that can really help that. We know, for example, when they did a study of 11 cities where 1% of the population meditated versus 11 cities where they didn't, there's a drop of crime rate of 16%. Oh, that's a hint, isn't it? We know that when 350 meditators went into Rhode Island, the violent crime rate and rapes and murders decreased 43%. People thought, well, that's a fluke. That was just over a few months. They came back the next year and it decreased 49%. So what do we learn from that? Well, there's been over 300 studies that show one simple fact. When people meditate for peace and pray for peace, there is an increase in peace in the area. So that should tell us something about the picture. The picture is it's up to us. The picture isn't really politics. The picture is how the politics are played out. Do we want to create peacefulness, or do we want war and destruction? And those are forces that have gone on throughout history, right? War, destruction, annihilation, or 300 or 400 years of peace that King Ashoka did in India. Okay? It can be done. Peace can be obtained. First, we have to have the cessation of war. Then, when you really look at it, besides restraining, we have to start moving towards a more philosophy of peace. That's where the sevenfold peace comes in. You know, if your mind is all out of balance because of the food you're eating and drugs you're taking, it's really hard to create peaceful thoughts. Okay? You're eating a good diet and you're meditating and, you know, the focus is on love. It's a lot easier to create peaceful thoughts. So these are kind of the issues that we're facing as a world. Because if this goes further, as I believe the Europeans are pushing it, and Zelensky is pushing it, and Trump has clearly said he doesn't want to see it go that way. It's called World War III. Okay, and the consequences of World War III are disastrous. And people could say, well, is Zelensky taking orders from the New World Order? Could be. It's come a lot out of, what they're now calling the Northern European group, which would include England. And they said, we're going to put troops in there. Well, it's clear putting troops in there is, Russia's already said that's an act of war. So something has to happen. This is, in a way, a crisis in a good way, hopefully. Depends how we come out, where we actually say, the way we're going is not getting us there. And, as I teach in my books, we create peace by being peace. And that's the key. Now, how do you get there? Well, first, stop war. Then over generations, we begin, and I said generations, I didn't say next week. We stop, we restrain, and then we try to set up systems that we're not going to break it down and start fighting again. But over generations of spiritual training, we start to create values of humans treating other humans respectfully. I didn't say love. That's way down the line. Let's start with something simple. Just acting respectfully to other people. And what we saw with the Trump-Zelensky thing is that Zelensky clearly, they said it so many times, you're just not acting in a respectful or grateful way. Well, we're just not going anywhere. I mean, you're coming in with this, you're winning war. Well, we don't want war, and we're not interested in warring with you. And some people feel he actually got kicked out of the White House. I'm not following the news that closely to make a statement about it. But first, let's just stop with a high-level aggression that, not just evil, but demonic energy of destroying other people, and kind of back off a little bit, and, cease the fire, so to speak. And then over generations, that's a concerted effort, like UNRWA in the Middle East was teaching wars, teaching kids 3-4 years old, to hate the Jews. Now, that's just not acceptable. And it was exposed, and UNRWA's lost a lot of its funding. But a UN agency teaching to hate another group in the Middle East like that? This is not anything associated with what a United Nations should be doing. So just like creating getting along, creating respectfulness, the right of others to exist in some way is kind of where this needs to go. Richard, if you want to add something here, you're welcome.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Gabriel, and I think it comes down to individual motivation. There's a power structure in place that's been really being revealed more with this Doge information that's been coming out. There are individuals that have decided that the most gratifying existence they can have is the exhilaration of power over other people. And they're in positions of power, and it's been over many years that that's been established. And it's turned into organizations like the United Nations and NATO and EU and all these organizations under the leadership of people just operating for the exhilaration of power. And they don't want to give it up. And when you say it's demonic, I think it's another way to look at the same concept. Is that the most satisfying way that they can feel exhilaration and feel good and feel the drug high of power is to dominate over other people and cause pain and destruction. And when you talk about peace, a lot of times it's like not a very exciting concept because it's just a lack of bad things happening, and everybody's looking for some kind of exhilaration, feeling good. And there has to be something offered that is more exhilarating than the domination of other people.
So what's being offered, when we talk about a lifestyle that brings world peace, we are talking about eating in a way that balances your brain. Did you just cut out, or did you stop?
I can't tell whether the microphone's working or not.
It's working now. Is there more you want to say? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, it comes down to a basic existential question of what is the purpose of the brief time that people spend in human form? And what is the exhilaration and the satisfaction that is available that you can get, and how do you get it? You know, you're dealing with this, so many problems in physical form, longevity and disease and suffering and poverty and all these things. How can that be overcome? And that's an individual question. Whatever happens to society is a secondary outcome of what happens to individuals. And I think something needs to be offered with clarity of what is possible. If you don't want domination and control of others through money and power, what is more satisfying and how do you get it? And then people that are, addicted to this style of domination over others, how do you offer them something that they'd rather change to so that there can be a change in the direction of the world?
Yeah. As I look at it, and I look at the way people are being killed, I call it bloodlust. That's where it comes into demonic versus just being evil. We're giving people a hard time. We're stealing from them. There is an excitement, unfortunately, that you see in the streets of Gaza, when they came back having killed 1,200 people, the people were cheering. There's a kind of a bloodlust that was going on, and very, very concerning. And I haven't seen that in a lot of places, I'm talking out of the Middle East. I don't really think, for example, Russia and Ukraine are at the level of bloodlust. They're fighting, they don't like each other, or you can say they hate each other, they're killing each other. But I don't know if they're lusting for blood. So I'm also saying that there are different levels of what's going on. And that's of concern, in this too. So I'm kind of looking at dimensions of how we're looking at it.
There was definitely evidence of bloodlust in how Russian prisoners were treated by the Ukrainian soldiers.
Unfortunately, I'm not aware of. Are you? What are you saying? What kind of?
Yeah, there were well publicized evidence of Ukrainian soldiers just shooting the Russian captives, prisoners of war, when they were helpless, and torturing them. Sounds like what you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't as aware of that. I mean, I know Zelensky has his kind of Nazi groups. Maybe that's what you're talking about. That they, is that what you're talking about, or?
I'm talking about
Azov groups. That's kind of a
right.
Nazi. Is that what you're saying? Is that group of people were doing that?
Yeah, and that group of people was basically brought in to power by the U.S.-backed coup in 2014.
Right.
Which should be a big part of the discussions right now.
Well, clearly the U.S. participated, and I believe it got in over its head in terms of how far it's gone. That's the best I understand, because I certainly wasn't following Ukraine and Russia at that point.
Right. There was a legitimately elected pro-Russia government that the U.S. helped overthrow. It led to the whole situation.
And then put in the Azov group, and also what we now know as Zelensky. Okay. So it feels like under Trump, moving away from that. That's the best I can say. That in his mind, we're not asking people to be saints, but we are trying to talk about stop the war,
right.
Which is a very deep understanding, because he didn't say peace, but just stopping the wars, which of course brings a certain level of peace. So I think that's a positive here that we're getting from the U.S. at this point.
Right.
So I feel good about that. That link, and I hope people are able to support that positive stop the war energy, which then opens the door to the next step, which is creating coexistence, then ultimately peace.
I've been encountering a lot of resistance from anti-Trump conservative voices lately that are saying that everything that Trump does is a lie, and even the threat of World War III is a lie, and nuclear weapons don't exist. Have you heard that?
No, I don't know what people you're saying, Richard, but I have to tell you, I'm not in California or Arizona anymore. I'm not in California. It's like we don't hear anything like that where I am.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It's like people can get into their paranoid and fantasies, but really, okay, that's what I would say to that.
Right. I think people have gotten to the point of thinking that everything is a lie and nothing exists. And there has to be some discrimination. And some of it came from the realization that the whole virus and pandemic thing was at scam.
Yes. And of course, the next round they're trying to pull off may not work so well because of that. Thank goodness.
Right. And a big question in the U.S. is whether Trump will be able to withstand the vaccine pushers for the bird flu.
Yeah, I understand. I don't know. There's different things. Even JFK is okaying a measles vaccine. I don't know. It's kind of, I gotta stick to this topic because it's like there is so much going on and so many different directions coming.
Right.
That it's hard to make a lot of sense. The thing is, we have to have that inner peace to begin with. When the inner peace is there, and we have the full level of that, then we can. It's a lot easier to create kind of an hour of coexistence, which then can evolve into peace.
Yeah.
I have to say, I'm optimistic. It's maybe a scene kind of a thing, but in the spring of, which could be a few months from now, of 2025, 2,000 years ago, the scene said there'll be a shift towards 1,000 years of peace. Maybe 75 years, but that's a short time in the big picture.
Right. And it seems like there's a group that's gotten into power in the American government that's unique and that's willing to expose what's been going on.
Yeah.
It hasn't been done.
Yeah.
And they're talking about abolishing the income tax, doing something to get rid of the Federal Reserve, talking to Ron Paul about getting out of NATO. I mean, there's all kinds of looking at Fort Knox to see if there's any gold there, exposing all the assassination files. I mean, a lot of really encouraging things.
But it brings it back to us because they got voted in by us. And they represent that wave of U.S. citizens moving towards creating a better world.
Yes, and away from partisan politics.
Yeah. So that's the optimism I'm talking about, is that there is a movement in the midst of all this, and that's why the Zelensky, Trump, J.D. Vance thing was so important, is that there was a clear contrast there. And for Trump to say, come back when you're interested in creating peace, is a big step.
Yeah.
That was like that. That's the key statement to the whole thing.
And the EU has a big part to play in it too, because they're trying to do everything they can to start wider war.
To start what?
A wider war.
Wider war, yeah, World War III.
As evidenced in what they're doing in Romania right now, for example.
Right. So I don't know what's going on for them, but I believe that they're part of the New World Order, and so they're much more energy in that direction, and I don't think they're going to succeed.
Yeah, they're talking about sending EU troops into Ukraine and calling them peacekeepers.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work. I think the U.S. is, I believe, very much against that. So, yeah, there is this conflicting stuff going on. And that's the times we're living in. But what we're seeing is much more positive energy emerging of how to handle the situation.
Right.
That's the exciting thing, from my point of view.
Yeah.
And it comes back to us, to create it in their lives. It's one thing to point, look at them, but it does come back to us because those political leaders reflect our consciousness. So the more people we can get, eating, healthy, non-mind agitating foods, and praying and meditating, living in a peaceful way and making an effort to get along with their neighbors, and with Mother Nature, and with all the different cultures, the better it is, period. It's just better. And that's the emphasis I want to put. We're talking world politics, but I'm with the idea of bringing it right back to us, because we're the ones that can influence it. And I heard an interview today about a man running for head of France. He wouldn't use the word president, but whatever it was. And he's saying the same things. He's really getting what we're talking about. So if they bring in somebody in France who's actually has a deeper understanding of the situation, one country at a time, one country at a time. Argentina has a really good person. So I think if we look at it that way, it will. I'm very optimistic, but we need to really be focusing on ourselves and how we transform ourselves so that we elect more and more people who seriously want to create world peace and, let's say, lack of war. I'm going to start there. We have to start at a simpler place. Peace is more evolved. When I look at, people put in it, head of this, head of that, they all seem to be more evolved in that direction, which is very good. It's not just Trump. So it's kind of exciting. I'm very positive, but we have to do our role, which is make a real effort to change how we are in relationship to those people around us, as well as, let's say, world politics, but down into our own heart space with those around us in our relationships. So I want to put the emphasis there because then it grows. Go ahead, Richard. Your microphone's blipping a little bit.
Yeah, I think that the point you're making about the microcosm of world peace is individual is very important. And all of the interactions that we have, the people that I was mentioning a minute ago, that we're saying that everything from Trump is evil, are coming from the point of view that if you disagree, that you must be evil too. And I think the main point is to rise above that and to realize that we're all connected and everything that we do affects everybody else. And so what we're putting out, what energy we're choosing to walk around in is the most important.
That polarized negative thinking is pretty dangerous. I just think less and less people are thinking quite so polarized. I'm hoping that way. So we have to move away from that. We have to understand that we are connected, and not that things are perfect. That's a child view. A mature view is that there's a lot of imperfections. But still, you have a relationship, and you have to work it out. And that's the key of how people evolve spiritually, is working out the relationships with each other. It's a specific spiritual path. So that's what we're talking about. And if you just want to condemn everybody and everything and think everybody's lying, it doesn't take you anywhere. It takes you really to a negative kind of place that really mitigates against peace and harmony. So as we conclude, I just want to bless everybody that we get more and more inspired, that we create a lifestyle, a diet and a relationship lifestyle, and a meditative lifestyle, and a relationship to nature lifestyle into all cultures, that we can begin moving towards more harmony. I'm going to just say getting along, and then eventually real peace, inner peace and outer peace. So may everyone be blessed with this. I thank Richard for your good input and Doug for your behind the scenes input as well.
I totally agree, and I think it's important that people don't underestimate the power that they have to project energy that affects everybody else in the whole place, and that we're each one very important. It's not just one out of billions. The more focused you become, the more emphasis comes from your energy. Where you're putting out is critical.
Okay. So, blessings to everyone, and peace be with you.
Have a wonderful week, everybody, and we'll see you here next time. Take care.